We're going to be doing things a bit differently this week as I showcase a few of my favorite displays and build ideas from some of my recent G.I. Joe classified spotlights, all in one place. I'm hoping it will give new viewers a taste of what we're all about here at Heroic Nonsense, while also giving the HN community a fun way to catch up with some recent faves and inspire everyone to go out and create their own ideas to share back here. Whatever the reason for being here, I promise you'll have a good time. Let's go. On to my favorite part of the spotlight, the display and build section, where we can allow some of our creative juices to flow. And I wanted to start with this awesome looking setup. While I ultimately didn't find the right team build just yet, figure-wise, I did find the right vehicle build for the Night Vipers, one incorporating the Night Vipers on patrol with the HISS 788 tank and some Stingers. I also tried out a few different configurations for this figure and vehicle unit, my first attempt resulting in this really cool shot of them. And while it did look very nice from the right angle with the vehicles a bit more spread out and out of formation, it just didn't hit the mark for me visually as a permanent display on our shelves. What I ultimately landed on was this one with the Stingers flanking either side of the HISS tank and Night Vipers on patrol. Adding in the spotlight from the HISS tank, even with the lights fully on in the background, gives this image an air of darkness, as if this team is really on patrol in the dead of night. I then started building it out a bit more using some Cobra Troopers and the sandbags that came with the recent Cobra and G.I. Joe modular bases. Eventually adding in a few M.M.S units to close out the edges. Side note, I love going back to the Cobra Troopers and pulling them out when I can because for some reason I always feel they work well in displays. So what do you think of this setup incorporating the Stingers and HISS tank as backup for the Night Vipers? Would you have set it up differently or perhaps used different vehicles? Let the Heroic Nonsense community know below. I love hearing about everyone's collections and ideas, and always nice to get some further inspiration. I did come up with some pretty cool and fun ideas that I think you'll enjoy and will definitely look good in your displays. Starting with my favorite individual pose of the bunch, which I'll then incorporate into some larger shots. As I promised earlier, I'm starting with the pose itself so you can get a good look at how I position the arms, hands, legs, and sword to accurately recreate this image. Next, we'll add in Darkline, who I positioned unsheathing his sword. I think you can probably see where I'm going with this one. This is definitely a Destro out for revenge. Now all we have to do is insert him into a scene, in this case surrounded by Cobra Commander's troops and the Crimson Guard. The question is, who's he coming for? If you guessed the Commander himself, then you're right, and I decided to use Cobra Commander in his battlesuit since it lines up with this era. Put it all together and you have a great little action display which you can build out further. You can also create some nice backstory, like for example, this Cobra Commander being an imposter, or Cobra Commander having done something personal to Destro or to the honor of his clan. Here's the same shot, but from a different angle. You can see I threw in some higher ups in the Cobra Command like Storm Shadow, who is always great for displays like these. Honestly, a great pose for Destro that totally works for showcasing the tension that exists between Cobra and the Iron Grenadiers. Now, if I really want to get creative and can let go of my favorite pose I showed at the start for a second, this is the way I would go next. A shot of Sundown enjoying a cup of coffee at sunrise after having slept in the desert, his hat and poncho draped over the ram. I grabbed the folded up sleeping bag accessory from the Vamp and Hit and Run's bag to add to the overall look here. The coffee mug is the one that came with crankcase and the Awe Striker. Out of all the Joes we have, Sundown seems like he is made for experimenting with. Look at all the accessories I just borrowed from other figures and sets, they all work perfectly. But where it really starts getting fun is when you start adding in other figures and vehicles, in this case adding in a second ram with Spirit, who I think works as another great pairing. Spirit being a tracker and perfect companion for small missions. I mean, you can just see them waking up after a cold night in the desert, packing up and getting ready for the next leg of their mission. In this case, meeting up with Clutch and the Vamp as they prep to take on Cobra, or splitting off from each other at the close of a successful operation and going their separate ways for their own stories. Now we get to the real fun part. This actually was probably one of my most fun display builds for a spotlight that I've ever done. I don't know, I just really like the stuff I came up with here. Hopefully you will too. So a lot of these ideas do need two of the same base unit, but I will showcase how it looks using both the Cobra modular fortification and the Joe defense post together for those of you who only have one of each. We'll start with this setup though, which in my mind gives off Checkpoint Alpha vibes from the original series. All you really need to create this are 2 of the machine gun posts tabbed together for each leg of the base, which luckily is not a problem since you get 2 with each playset. To recreate this look, keep one of the posts in the shortest configuration, then tab the other into it, going up 2 slots in height. The floor is held up on the other side by tabbing 2 connected panels into the floor tabs on the second floor. Add in the ladders tabbed into each other for some extra support. And voila, you have yourself your own checkpoint tower using just 2 defense posts, and although a full-size vehicle like the Vamp can't fit underneath, the Ram perfectly takes its spot. Again, I love adding in the M.M.S or H.M.S in the case of Cobra to these builds, along with the sandbags. In this case, I also included Law and Order, along with Mutt and Junkyard as our main sentries, perfect for a Joe checkpoint. Once you have that main building set up, you can then start expanding it using other vehicles and figures, combining them in whatever ways best suit your needs. Overall, I think this is probably my favorite build, at least until we potentially get more modular sets. Even then, this may still be a great start for a future expansion. Once you add in some more figures and vehicles, you get a really nice dynamic playset and display for your Joes. Still trying to work out how we'll set this Joe defense post up in our shelves given height, but if I do have the space, this is the way we're going. Now, for those of you who only have a Joe and Cobra set, or for those who have more and want to expand your bases even further, I think combining them is a perfectly viable solution, but only for Cobra though, and I'll explain why in a second. Now from this angle, this completely looks like a Cobra outpost, but it's not, because it's actually using our 2 Joe modular bases as well, and that's really my point. Other than the small reference to the Joe defense post at the bottom of some of the panels, you can't really tell that the Joe outpost panels are in fact Joe and not Cobra ones. Yes, there's a big star, but in no way does that only represent the Joes. I kept the brown posts for the legs of the overreach portion, but the black ones from the Cobra modular fortification would actually be the way to go here, with the brown ones being repurposed for the weapons inside. Adding in that crate that comes with the ramp rats actually makes it feel more like a Cobra outpost, even with just that one small addition. And while I did choose the panels to alternate between blue and silver this way, you can mix and match them the way you see fit. The reason this has to be a Cobra base though is because of the huge Cobra symbols on the side panels, but wow is this a game changer, allowing you to easily create a bigger playset within the confines of your collection, whatever the size may be. So now I turn it over to you. Sound off below on whether you think this is a great idea or whether you prefer keeping them separate. Another great way to use this setup is with the ferrets, as it attaches to their frame quite easily given the flexible nature of the hooks. It actually also kind of works with the ammo of this playset. The ramp rats need to move armaments around quickly at the base. Best way to do that? Use the ferrets as light vehicles as intended to easily get around. Which brings me to my next display idea. How amazing do these guys look with the ferrets? I mean, this just seems like the perfect matchup, and they fit right in with the Rattler as you can see set up right behind here. I don't know, something about this group of vehicles and figures, colors, style, aesthetic, it all works. We typically display the ferrets with the Crimson Twins, but I think I may have found an even better pairing with this. This setup also looks really good with the Cobra modular fortification playset, and as we'll see in a moment, incorporates the crate the ramp rats come with nicely. Even without the Cobra Rattler or modular fortification, these guys totally work with the ferrets. Like I said, perfect for the ramp rats to get around the Cobra airbase. I kinda wish I had 2 more of each at this point, but I'm hoping they make some more of these guys in different colors, and we'll see what kind of light attack vehicles come out next for Cobra. In the meantime, if we don't end up keeping the ramp rats displayed with the Rattler in the Rattler's display stand, this is the way we're going. Such a cool mini display. Now if you want a more elaborate setup, then I'd wager this is the way to go. This setup for me completely evokes that early 80s era of G.I. Joe with the Silver Command Center headquarters playset and the original lineup of G.I. Joe figures and vehicles. And adding in some sandbags and the M.M.S is such a great way to expand on this concept. You can really play around with a ton of different ideas for setups here. We only got 2 of the Joe modular bases because I'm hoping eventually they'll make more that will connect to this one. Either way though, it makes for a great background for your collection and gives off those retro vibes, especially when throwing in some of the original Joes to man the base. To be honest, I'm still figuring out how to best display the modular base, but whatever configuration we end up using, I will likely have the M.M.S included. Since this spotlight is focused on the surface-to-air missile system, I had to find a way to incorporate our Rattler, and trust me, it's not the easiest thing to do in this scale. What I did come up with was this small action shot of the Joes in the field with Wild Weasel coming in low for an attack in his Rattler, taking advantage of the display base it comes with. From the right angle, you can actually get some really nice action shots of the Joes caught in the crosshairs of the low-flying Rattler, as they prep the M.M.S to launch its payload of missiles. And side note, I don't know why, but looking at this shot makes me feel like I'm playing with the original 1/18 scale toys, and I'm totally here for it. So the Rattler on its own is impressive, we all know that. but a plane of this size really needs its own proper display. And so that's where this comes in, and I have to say, I really like this design, even more than the one for the HasLab classified Dragonfly. And it allows for 5, not 2, different ways of displaying the Rattler, taking off, dive bombing, flying straight, and banking left or right. And what to do with those 2 extra pieces of heavy ordnance that need to be removed for the display? Well, you can place them on each side, along with all the other armaments if you so wish. Now to really make the display complete, the HasLab Rattler comes with all these blast and laser effects, some more practical than others. One way you can use this effect is to launch the front missile off of the larger portion. You can also use one of the smaller effects for the Gatling gun on the front. As for the smallest blue laser effect, these go right here for the Rattler gunner's turret lasers. They've even modified them so that the connector is a bit longer so it stays really nicely in place. These effects are probably my favorite ones though. They look incredible here shooting out of the back of the wing engines, though a third would have been perfect for the back. However, you can use this larger one for the back, similar to how the Rattler looked on the original 80s packaging. I prefer using it where it should be used, however, with the missiles. And putting it all together, this is what you get, and that is one amazing work of art. Just very quickly, I wanted to show you how the display works for the different display options, this being the bombing run position. You can see how it connects here using the extra slanted piece. If you take that extra plastic piece off, you can have the plane flying straight. So you get a very nice, fast attack look for your Rattler. Alternatively, you can have the Rattler taking off, which also looks really good. To be honest, all these poses are equally cool. And finally, a few shots of the Rattler banking to one side, which is achieved by turning the attachment piece 90 degrees in either direction, something I don't think they really advertised much. Let us know which is your favorite or how you would display your Rattler in the comments section. And I even like having these 2 extra pieces of ordnance right at the top, almost looks like it's part of the plane. As I was finalizing this video, I thought of something quite unique for a display idea, so I went back and took some extra shots. If you switch out some of the bombs, you can make it look like the plane is actually dropping them. Whatever you end up doing, this display stand has you covered. Now onto the more elaborate displays, starting with one I wanted to do for a while, where Mainframe is sneaking into a Cobra outpost to cause some tech mayhem with their systems. I started with this basic setup of a few Cobra troopers hanging out near a Stinger, which grew into a whole display idea incorporating more troopers, a Televiper, the Rattler, and some Cobra flight pods. As a kid, I used to use Mainframe as a bit of a Firefly-inspired saboteur, but on the Joe side, and focusing more on tech attacks than explosives. So I think this type of setup ultimately captures that idea really well. Another idea I really wanted to explore was Mainframe embedded with a standard Joe unit along with his buddy Dialtone, prepping for a mission together before heading into the thick of it. I could see this unit somewhere near a forest, lining an open field, under the cover of darkness, getting their gear together and checking their equipment before heading out. Along the same lines, I wanted to showcase this cool setup my boys created using some of the Cobra and Joe outposts, which actually makes for a really nice diorama. By the way, my boys have their own channel called Raimai's Toy Emporium, where they get really creative with their toys, and it's totally for kids, so check it out with your families. I'll post a link below. I like to create some backstories for our displays, and I think I came up with a pretty good one here for the Cobra Divers, starting with this basic crouched pose I showed earlier. All it takes are a few Night Vipers and you have yourself a Cobra unit display where in my mind the divers just hit the beach under the cover of darkness and are met with a Night Viper unit who had already been inserted into the environment at an earlier time. You can even use the crate that comes with the Cobra Ramp Rats that I spotlighted last classified review to give it some more dynamics, perhaps having been dropped by parachute at the same time as the diver's landing. Continuing that storyline, we can use the Cobra modular base as part of the display, having been set up in an island jungle in secret years ago and now being brought back up into operation. It could be where the Night Vipers have been hiding out, with a new contingent of Cobra SEALs meeting up to reopen the base for business. Added in a ferret as the perfect light attack vehicle to move around the island with. This shot plays off the idea of the Cobra Divers having just been brought to the base by the Night Vipers and getting ready to set up and unload their gear. And as promised, the incorporation of the compact gear setup I came up with earlier that the divers can carry and which fits in perfectly with this little diorama. Ultimately, another great use of the Cobra modular base with a cool combo of different sets of figures and vehicles. So that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed this little interlude. There's tons more G.I. Joe classified and Transformer spotlights on the channel, so be sure to check those out if you've missed any or it's your first time here. And we'll of course be back next week with some all new spotlights. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Transform!